Hello, good afternoon. I thought I'd take this opportunity to just introduce you to a case that I'm working on at the moment. It's the case of Danielle Jeffries. Now, I'm using the hashtag #FreeDanielle for this one. Danielle has been sentenced to 3 months in prison in Dubai. She's a US national from Florida and a professional accountant. She's worked for a lot of the top accountancies, KPMG, that kind of thing. And she went over to Dubai to broaden her horizons, her international experience, and ended up working with an Australian woman at an accountancy. Anyway, she decided to establish her own business over there and do everything correctly. I mean, she is in, auditing, so it's something that you must be always quite diligent with. So she decided to branch out, gave her employer notice, and also hired the services of a PRO to apply for her license. Now, the PRO actually was a little bit negligent or cutting corners, trying to make his money faster, perhaps. We're not exactly sure the reasoning, but he filed the PRO without permission too early because you're supposed to have the authorization of your current employer. So he skipped that step, and when her employer found out that she'd been applying for a license without having given notice yet, and we're talking the difference of a couple of weeks, an action was taken against her for a violation. In fact, at that stage, the PRO admitted that it was him that made the mistake, and she was released. Police did not pursue the allegations against her. But then later, the PRO changed his story that he'd provided to police and said, in fact, it was the two of them together. And the police, not really caring what the truth was, decided to prosecute Danielle as well as the PRO. So she's ended up with a 3-month sentence. It hasn't been executed yet, but perhaps if she went to the police station and said, "Hi, it's Danielle," perhaps at that point they would put her into prison. Now, all of this, we're talking about some administrative error, essentially, that has been made by someone else, not even Danielle, and she's been sentenced to 3 months in prison. And this is absolutely ridiculous. For what? Why would the UAE want to hurt their international standing, their reputation, on the basis of someone's PRO applying for a license in advance of obtaining permission from the employer? But this also just shows just how much power an employer has over an employee in the UAE. And this is why so many people have actually ended up in prison or ended up without their end of service leave just because the employer has the power to withhold that, and it's going to be really difficult to take it through the labour courts to get what is owed to someone. So Danielle here, simply wanting to start a business, perhaps the case was taken against her by her employer, perhaps because she was going to be competition to the lady. But in any case, it was taken, and it went all the way through to prosecution, even though the only shred of evidence that they had against her was the PRO's own statement. And his statement was completely different in the first instance than it was later. Yet on the basis of this, she has a 3-month sentence hanging over her head. Damn, it's getting hot. So anyway, we've contacted Marco Rubio. He has said, Senator of Florida, so he has said, go back to the embassy, go back to the US embassy. He doesn't want to, bother himself with it. Now, this is the attitude of a lot of senators, a lot of MPs. They can be very disinterested in at the first approach, most of them in fact, and this is also the case with embassies. If someone approaches the British embassy or the US embassy and says, "Hey, can you help me in this matter?" the standard response is going to be, well, no, it's a legal matter, here's our list of lawyers, good luck with that. And the same that can be said for most MPs, most senators. As soon as you ask them for help, most people are lazy, and they've also got a lot to do. So if they can not deal with something, or if they can palm it off to someone else, they will probably try to do that, unless they see that there's something in it for them. So this is how we get a lot of support from MPs in Canada, Australia, UK, and also senators in the US. Now, that is from letting them know that if they do good in this case, you know, it's going to attract the kind of media attention that they would want, that supports them for their next election. I mean, some of them have been extremely helpful, and I think a lot of them don't even realise that they can actually influence the outcome of someone's life, or something that someone's imprisonment in another country, in an Arab country, and they wouldn't think that they had that power. So MPs, Member of Parliament, senators, if they push the embassy, they push the State Department to take action on behalf of a constituent, then they're actually going to be able to influence the outcome of that case. The embassy is suddenly going to go outside of their comfort zone and facilitate the release of someone. Now, we've seen a lot of intervention from Canada in the case of Andre Gautier. We've seen US citizen David Oliver. The US embassy went out of their way to help him, and they got him home, and he had been stuck out there for years. Finally, they intervened. They were so proactive that they went to the bank to discuss solutions. The bank was the one holding him in the country, so they went to the bank, tried to convince them to drop the cases. Ultimately, they did, and they got their citizen home. So there is absolutely no excuse for any MP thinking that they can't get involved, that they can't influence the outcome of the case. It's very clear and well evidenced that they can. In fact, they've been doing this so long, including there's quite an old case now that I worked on of Matt Joyce and Marcus Lee, some Australian citizens. The Australian embassy and the authorities actually got very, very heavily involved in this case, and which led to the release of two citizens who were facing decades actually in prison. So, I mean, this is what we need to do when someone is in prison. We gather the support of the government as much as possible, and we do that through showing them what other people have done for us in the past. Even Priti Patel has helped in the case of Asa Hutchinson, proactively helping to get her home. We've seen a lot of UK PMs. They're seeing the benefit of standing up for their citizens in media situations and against Gulf nations. So now back to Danielle. We're hoping that Marco Rubio will also see the benefit of this and get involved and show the US that he is willing to stand up for his constituent, that he's willing to stand up for a US citizen who's facing 3 months in prison over a bureaucratic error. And can the UAE get involved? Can the authorities in the UAE get involved? Can Sheikh Mohammed intervene? Can the ambassador, the UAE ambassador to the United States, can he get involved in this case? Can he highlight it to authorities in Dubai? Absolutely. Absolutely. What we've seen time and time again over the past decade is that definitely the UAE authorities will intervene when it's in their best interest to do so. And we've seen that in, so many examples of cases. Jamie Harron, Billy Barclay, the list is endless. But certainly in this particular case, Danielle, we really want to see that US intervention. We've contacted the US Embassy. They've written back in the first instance, but we want to see them, give Danielle the same support that they gave David Oliver. David Oliver actually finally made it back to the US, and unfortunately he died about a year later, but at least he got to spend that time with his family, and they're writing a book, so I'm really looking forward to that, and I'm glad that we're able to give him so much support and the family so much support during that time. But again, the intervention that the US gave in that case is definitely intervention that they should be giving in Danielle's case, and it makes me wonder why Danielle's not getting that same support right now. So we're going to be lobbying the US government very, very hard for their intervention in this one. We're a little bit concerned that the UAE has some paid lobbyists who are really intervening in US politics and influencing, media, senators. So we need to make sure that that's not going to change the way that the US authorities deal with situations like Danielle's. But yes, okay. Hashtag free Danielle. Let's see what happens with her. If you didn't tune in earlier, we've had Morag Kusa, client of ours, who's returned back to England in the past couple of days. So we're very excited about that. Very excited about Danielle returning to Florida, and we're very excited about getting other people in the same situation as Morag back home. That's Jonathan Castle and many others. I mean, the numbers are huge, really. So what we'd really appreciate coming from the UK and the US is that pressure, and India, not that we'll see it from India, we'll discuss India on another day, but what we'd like to see is that pressure coming from the West onto the UAE to stop jailing foreigners for debt matters or civil matters, and to stop preventing them from leaving the country. We have in place, the UK and the UAE do, a mutual enforcement agreement. That means that commercial agreements, civil matters that happen in the UAE can also be enforced in the UK, and vice versa. So if someone leaves the UAE and they owe a debt to a bank, there's absolutely no reason why that bank can't chase them in United Kingdom. So therefore, why keep them in a country where they're not able to earn any money to pay back the bank? Doesn't make sense, does it? But I think, the banks know this, but I think perhaps they just still like the threat of prison hanging over that debtor, and hope that perhaps, that threat is going to get them to contact their friends and family to help out and perhaps raise money. And maybe that works for them some of the time. But I think overall, most debtors are, if they have the money to pay the debt, they will, because they do want to get out of the country. They're not just going to voluntarily stay there indefinitely, risking homelessness and all sorts of issues. If they have the money, they pay the money, and if they don't, they're just stuck there. Let them go home and work. Enforce the debt through normal legal channels, as they do, in fact, enforce in the United Kingdom. But anyway, thank you for watching, and please keep an eye on hashtag Free Danielle. There's actually a group on Facebook, so we'll be updating on that, and hopefully we'll be able to report the same wonderful results as we have been able to in Morag's case. So have a great day, everyone. Hello, Chris, Australia. Good to see you all. Yeah. Hi, everyone. Hi. Just let me know if you've got any questions or anything that you want me to cover in the future, and have a lovely day.